Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing Crup in the 5-minute pool on ICC. Alright, we're starting with c4 g6 in this game. I played International Master Danny Wrench in Chess Rivals earlier today, and I was a little bit foggy. I was not playing my best, so I gotta step my game up and try to put in a couple good games here. 3 good games, in fact, for today's Blitz session. So against Crup or Cruppy, we're trying to establish this knight on d4. This is a IM named Charlie Cobb. Hello to you, Mr. Cobb. All right. Hope you guys are doing well today. It's actually very warm here in Minnesota, like unseasonably warm, as in 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which we will definitely take at this stage in the winter. Usually late January, early February, it's much worse than that. So part of me wishes I was outside right now, but if I wasn't outside, I'm happy to be indoors recording like this. So, all right. So he's playing Bishop D3 and kind of blockading the D pawn. Now I think I should play D6 and then go Knight F6 and possibly put the knight on D7, because then we could get into C5 and also we wouldn't be blocking our dark square bishop. So to me, this looks like a pretty good plan. Okay, so if Knight D7 right away, will they play Knight F3 or Knight C5? Is that the plan? Well, let's do this immediately just to see. I want to see where they send this knight before I decide if I want to castle. I don't think castling is quite necessary yet, so hence I'm holding off on that move for now. Okay, so they play F4. That makes me feel a bit better about my delaying castling decision. Now I will castle, though. So the major concern in this position is that the D4 pawn gets stranded somehow. I think if something bad were to happen to me, it would be because of that. B4. Can't I just play A5 against that and fight for the queen side? I'm going to do that because they can't respond with A3 due to A takes B4. So white just takes on A5, but now I can take with the queen. I can even play Knight C5 and hit the bishop right away. If Knight C5, probably Knight B3 though. So I'm thinking I should take this first. And I'm leaning towards taking with the queen. Yeah, let's do that. So queen takes. If Knight B3 with tempo, I'll probably drop the queen back to A7 or C7. Both moves might be decent. Let's go to C7. On A7, I would be defending this pawn better, though. So maybe that was a slight mistake by me. Yeah, because he can play bishop B2 here, which he just did. Yeah, I might have to change my mind now, because Knight C5, he could probably play Knight takes D4 then. A bit sloppy. Although Knight C5, if Knight takes D4, there's Knight A4, which is pretty nasty. What if Knight C5, Bishop takes D4? Then I maybe take, Knight takes, Rook A3, something like that. It's kind of speculative. You know what? Let's try it. I'm going to see if he dares to take that D4 pawn. Been on an aggressive playing streak lately, shaking up my game a little bit. I know what my default game is. It's more strategic, positional, accumulating small advantages, trying to convert them. And I think if I want to grow as a chess player, I have to challenge myself with stuff like what I'm doing here. Getting outside my comfort zone a little bit. So, putting him to a decision. I mean, I think bishop takes d4. But then I was looking at some weird stuff, like even queen b6 is possible here. Or taking first and then queen b6. Or taking and then playing rook a3 is another idea. Although then he has knight b5, so probably I shouldn't play that way. If knight takes b3, he takes g7. And I think I'm coming out behind there. Let's do this one. Maybe not. There's even bishop g4, isn't there? Okay, let's take. I'm just going to play bishop d7, I think. Although then he gets a chance to play knight b3, doesn't he? All right, let's do this one. Bishop g4. If bishop e2, maybe I come back to d7. I'm down a pawn, but this knight is well placed. e4 is weak. There's some compensation. Or at least that's what I'm going to tell myself. So if queen takes g4, knight takes d3, then queen c5 is a possible idea. Also c4 is hanging. So I'm not incredibly worried about that line. I think more likely white's going to play bishop e2 or move the queen. Maybe knight f3, but I don't know if they want to walk into a pin like that. That gives me license to play rook a3, which I would have liked to play on the last move, if not for this knight b5 annoyance, forking the queen and the rook. Although perhaps I could have responded to that with queen b6, so I don't know. Now I'm going to get another chance to consider that line. So rook a3, knight b5, queen b6. Knight takes a3. Knight takes d3 check. They can always throw in the c5 move, though. That's kind of pesky. Yeah, I don't completely trust this. Maybe just rook a4. Yeah, let's do that. Put the rook in on a good square. Maybe get ready to double up on the a file. This is a bad bishop for white. White might like to get a pawn break like f5 or e5 in the future. But that seems like a fantasy at the moment. So my plan is just to double up and also bring the bishop back to d7 if necessary. It's kind of just floating out here. I'm actually a little bit worried if they play something like f5 trying to trap that bishop. Don't know if that quite will work, but maybe it's prudent just to drop this back, huh? Yeah, let's play this before f5 or something becomes an issue. It's going to take white a few moves to consolidate, moves like king h1 as you see. So maybe I can use this time to crank up the pressure on the queen side. Okay, now I'm ahead on time. So my aggressive play and confusion-inducing play has allowed me to creep ahead on the clock. We like that. And with every ticking second, white's extra pawn becomes less meaningful. If knight b3, maybe rook a3. I might play rook a3 anyways here. Yeah, let's do that. Attack that bishop. Try to force them to play bishop e2 or bishop f1. Both moves are pretty passive. Now I'm just going to go after a2. They can't go knight b3 because I take it, so let's get ready to grab that pawn. Okay, finally white plays e5. I thought there was a possibility like that, but it seems too little too late. I mean, taking doesn't bother me. I can always just recapture. This endgame is great for black, I think, with this strong knight on c5. It defends b7. Yeah, he's grasping at straws here. Let's take the opportunity to trade. I'll just get the queens off the board immediately. Let's just take back. I could play rook a1, but I don't think it's necessary right now. Maybe now rook a1 is decent. Yeah, let's play it. We pin him a bit. If king f2, we can give a check on e4, so I think that's why he played this move. Maybe bishop f5. It's kind of nifty. Let's do that. So if he takes it, I'm thinking bishop d3. So now he can use the pin against this bishop. And he's got 10 seconds left. He's not going to make it. Take this. His bishop's pinned. d5 also under attack. All right, so he resigned. So I would characterize my decision to sacrifice the d-pawn as a bluff. I think that's a completely fair characterization. I'm not going to say that this was a brilliant sacrifice by any means. It was a bluff or a semi-bluff at best, because I hadn't quite worked out what happens if bishop takes d4. But you know, I think in Blitz, there's a lot to be said for making aggressive moves that force your opponent to a decision. Maybe these are not moves that you've calculated the entire way and you wouldn't feel comfortable playing over the board. But in a Blitz game, I mean, if you can force your opponent to sit there and think for a minute trying to consolidate a pawn, it might be worth it. And that's kind of what happened here. He spent a lot of time figuring out how best to stabilize the position after he won the pawn, and I was able to play a lot of useful moves on the queen side, and in the end his a pawn was a sitting duck. So I kind of think if white were to improve, probably it would be somewhere right around after we traded on d4. I mean, maybe here the engine will say something like just queen takes g4, or a simpler move, maybe bishop e2. I don't know. I think black certainly has some compensation, but I would doubt if it's full compensation. The computers are pretty good at dispelling any doubts about being equal or even worse when you're up a pawn. So I'm almost certain the engine's going to say white's better here. So let's go back. So this started out as in English, and I played g6 on move 1. And we got this set up, and previously I've said that I think knight c6 is the best move here. I played c5 and some other moves before, but I've had the most success with knight c6, looking to drop the knight into d4. So now d5. If white defends with knight f3 or e5, black can strike back in the center. For instance, if this bishop e3 move, then e5, and if d5, knight d4, all the same. So we got this, and then knight e2. Certainly I could just take on e2, but I thought it would be interesting to play c5 and give white the option of taking, and then taking with the c pawn, which is now a d pawn. This is double-edged because, as I was saying, I mean, this pawn is far removed from black's other pieces, and it's in white's half of the board, so it's kind of an intruder that white might look to corner and win. But it takes white some contorting to even get in a position to win that pawn, and I can use that time to further my position in some way. So let's go ahead here a little bit. Bishop d3, d6. Yeah, and I was just delaying castling because here with knight d7, I feel like defending the pawn is good just to see how white plays the next couple of moves. Maybe they'll very aggressively go after the d pawn. Like if I were to simply castle here, I wonder if something like knight b3, knight d7, bishop c2 is possible. Just saying, hey, I'm going to take your pawn at the earliest convenience. Perhaps this is too straightforward. Maybe black can play queen b6, but I felt that castling was not necessary right here. It's not a completely unnecessary move. Like, clearly I should get my king to safety soon, but in this exact position, knight d7 probably helps me more since it defends that pawn there. And I've talked a lot in the past about how you want to prioritize moves that look similar and try to find some difference in them. Often these are moves like in the opening. You have a choice between like a couple standard looking developing moves. But if you can find some difference between the two and say like, this one actually is necessary right now, whereas this one is only kind of necessary, then that might make your decision easier. So white played f4. I castled, and I didn't like this move positionally because after a5, this undermining move, it would be best for white if they could play a3 and maintain this pawn on b4 because that stops my knight from coming to c5. But here they clearly can't play a3 because I'll just take, and they would lose their rook if they took back. So logically, if we're thinking backwards and figuring out how to prepare b4, maybe white should consider a3 here or rook b1, one of those two moves. Let's add in the engine right here and see. Engine says the position's roughly equal. It wants to go knight f3. Let's see what it says about b4. Yeah, a5 seems like a good stab with the pawn, because I'm fighting for control of c5 with this a5 move. I'm trying to make sure white's pawn does not stand here indefinitely guarding that square. White could close it up, but I think if I get knight c5 in, I'm very pleased. So take, I took with the queen. Probably my next move is a mistake. I played queen c7, but after this I felt somewhat obligated to sacrifice the d-pawn. Maybe I should have gone with my instinct and dropped the queen here, where it defends this a bit better. Or, I see the engine was even saying queen a4, not a move I thought about. But that could make sense too, although, won't I have a similar problem here? Knight c5. Can white get away with taking the pawn? Maybe that's too risky now. Take. Do I just win a piece here? Probably take and then knight a4. Yeah, let's say they take this way. Yeah, knight a4. This is a tactical idea that I had mentioned in the game too. White has trouble defending these. So yes, queen a4 was playable here as well. Now after bishop b2, maybe my objectively best decision is just to play queen b6 and defend the pawn. But I'd spent some time, and I mean, sometimes you do get attached to a certain variation or line of thinking, like, I'm gonna play actively here at all costs. No matter what happens in the position, I'm going forward. And perhaps I was a little bit of a victim to that. It's a common mentality in chess. As long as it's not too all-encompassing and such an attitude doesn't permeate every aspect of your chess play, then I think it's fine to experience this and even act on it once in a while. Engine says this is fine, knight c5. So bishop takes d4. And here I traded. Better to play bishop g4 first, according to the computer. That's interesting. Wonder what the difference is. I mean, it might just have something to do with his knight being on b3. Like, I can imagine in the case of queen d2, it's nice to be able to take here with tempo on the queen. Whereas in the game, after bishop takes d4, I could try knight takes b3, but the point is white's going to insert this move, bishop takes g7, an in-between move. And then if the bloodshed continues here, knight takes a1, they can take on a8, and I'm always down a pawn at the end of the day, I think. I mean, maybe I could try something like rook takes a2 here, but it seems suspicious somehow, a little bit. Now, even here, the engine says it's close to equal. So yeah, maybe bishop g4 is slightly more accurate straight away, but I traded and then went bishop g4. White played queen c2. d2 is a better square. Bishop e2 also possible. But this is promising. This is nice to see because it means that black does have compensation if white's up a pawn here, but the engine rates the position as equal. Here it says take, queen takes, and just drop the knight back, intending this. That's a little surprising because you would think that I would want to keep my knight on this awesome c5 square, but maybe it's more important to threaten this and maybe the c4 pawn in view of a move like rook a4, which double attacks here and gets ready to double as well. So, yeah, I mean, the pawn that white is up is kind of hard to defend, like this c pawn, and they're in danger of being overextended here with their pawns in general. My pawn formation is compact, and it's pretty far back. White doesn't have an easy shot at it. So queen c2, I played rook a4. Knight takes d3 also possible. I thought about knight takes d3, but I couldn't bring myself to part with this awesome knight. It felt like white's bishop was going to be a very bad piece for the foreseeable future. This is a nice little plan, I think. I mean, just doubling up. Here I wanted to bail out just to make sure that white couldn't somehow trap my bishop on the king side. Yeah, and right around here, white started using a lot of time, and even though they're up a pawn, soon they end up losing it. Yeah, queen a5, and this pawn is under attack. And now I've evened up the material. I have a slightly better position, and white is far down on the clock. I had about a minute advantage at this point. And this was pretty straightforward. I mean, just not enough play for white. Objectively, they probably can hold this, but with the amount of time they have, it's really, really difficult. I mean, even with time, I shouldn't say that white could just hold this easily. Like, black looks like they can press. Like, now this pin is particularly annoying, and bishop d3 is a big threat. Yeah, which I got in. Pinning the bishop. Pick up this pawn, and white resigned. I could even get this pawn on the next move. So it seems like this pawn sacrifice did lead to some nice activity. I think white's b4 move was mistaken. The fact that I can even lose a pawn after that and black's position is fine is maybe telling that white's structure is not so good, and b4 was probably a premature advance, and white had 4 pawns on the 4th rank. They're subject to overextension at that point. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed this game, and I'll be back again soon with another one. Talk to you guys later. Bye.